Tell me about how Trump actually tried to steal the election.
In the lead up to January 6th, they brought 50 some odd court cases. Every single one of them were either dismissed before trial. There was just that little evidence of voter fraud.
Man, the deep state's working double time, huh?
Right? Yeah. And that would be the thought. Problem was, something like 10 of those judges were Trump-appointed judges.
True. Bingo.
Once all the court cases failed, he had one final pin to pull out of a grenade.
Johnny, you said earlier that when it came out that the election wasn't actually stolen and that was obvious to everyone, you said that like 5 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't think that's obvious to everyone because
So
until me meeting you a year ago and you kind of explaining it to me, I was still under the impression that there was a lot of funny business that happened in the election that kind of screwed over Trump. So tell me, dive into that.
Give the 5-minute rap sheet. So I want to clarify the earlier statement. When I said obvious to everyone, what I meant was obvious to everybody working in the media companies that were still saying it. Because the whole job of a media company is to investigate this to know the truth. Right? That's what it's supposed to be anyway. So they did their homework, investigated it to find out the truth. Their internal legal teams, their internal, actual journalistic organization was saying, hey, we don't think this is legit. Don't go live with this. And then the hosts were like, who gives a shit? I'm doing it anyway. Right to the TV screen because it was a good story and they couldn't help themselves.
That's a lot of work for our 24-hour entertainment station, dude.
Yeah. So they did the journalistic work. They realized that some of the information was skeptical at best. So one example, I'm just going to give a rap sheet of things where this becomes obvious that they know they're lying. One of the principal parts of this whole thing, if you were following it at the time, was obviously Rudy Giuliani. He was one of the ones bringing the court cases. He was one of the ones championing this election was stolen over and over again. He morphed his whole pro-Trump career around this in the 2020 election, right? He's the one doing most of the heavy lifting. In 2 different cases where he is now criminally convicted and he's now disbarred as a lawyer, he had to admit that he knew he was lying because they had him dead to rights. That's one huge piece.
What does that mean?
Dead
to rights.
Basically, they had evidence that he knew he was lying about the voter fraud. That he wasn't telling the truth, which is why he's now disbarred as a lawyer. He can't practice law at all anymore.
Makes sense.
So, and he's not the only one. There were a number of other people around Trump, around the 2020 thing that have since been convicted. Okay. So the problem is those people at the time, these cases were already starting to pop up against them. Even before that, in the lead up to the January 6th events, you had, and my timeline's fuzzy because I haven't followed all of this. In fact, Destiny on YouTube is probably the one who did the best breakdown of it. He has a 2-hour video that explains everything that led up to January 6th and what all the election denial was all about. And it's good journalistic work. I mean, he did his homework. He spent a whole week on stream pulling everything together and even did a focus group. It was kind of interesting. But so he would be a better person for specific timelines. But basically in the lead up to January 6th, they brought 50 some odd court cases. Every single one of them were either dismissed before trial or immediately thrown out because there was just that little evidence of voter fraud. The media
the deep
knows
state's
this.
Working double time, huh?
Right? Yeah. And that would be the thought. Problem was, something like 10 of those judges were Trump-appointed judges.
True.
But I would suggest
Bingo.
out of self-interest, they didn't want to also be removed from ever being able to practice law again or be a judge. And so if the case is that bad, they knew it would just be obvious political hackery if they had gone along with it. So they threw it out where it made sense. The juries, the ones that had jury, based choices, the ones that were criminal, those all got thrown out. There's another one that's on the rap sheet where, and this is, I think, what Giuliani got actually convicted of. It's also what Newsmax got sued for. They presented a video of a woman who's like that, like she was like one woman that they had a video. This was one of the things they claimed evidence of. You might have seen the video. A lot of people saw the video of her doing something with pulling a box of ballots somewhere. And she was like an election worker. And they're like, see, these are the secret ballots here's all the voter fraud. That story was totally bogus. She was suing all of these people who defamed her because her life became filled with death threats. And I mean, obviously, right? Like the right wing is highly motivated. They think the election was stolen. And that's what's being told and rather sold to them on Newsmax, One American News, and Fox every single day. And so they buy into this. They think that's like legit. And that results in her life becoming miserable. And so she takes legal action against these people. And that was one of the cases, I believe, against Giuliani. I might have some of my facts about that slightly wrong, but these are the things that, again, people in the media, it was obvious to them that this was a known lie. And that was true for every single media company. We know that from their internal documents. Newsmax actually lost their lawsuit against Dominion. They actually tried to fight and failed.
Wow. What was you and I had a conversation one time about some big bust at Newsmax. They got exposed for something big.
Oh, yeah. Here's the funny part about that. I don't remember the specific one that you're talking about because that's how many there were. Like there was a cycle of between, I would say, 2020 and 2022 where that story kept having more and more crazy things about it all around election, all around clearly favoring certain politicians, all of that. But it was beset by the fact that at the same time you had a Republican guy in New York completely lie and manufacture his own career to get into the House of Representatives. Crazy story, took up 2 weeks in the media cycle, right? So you had all these other like big stories going on at the time. Do you not know about that? About the Republican House of Representatives member? Like Santos or I'd have to Google it really quick.
Is it George Santos?
That might be it. Yeah, George Santos. The guy who completely made up his entire identity.
I could be making that up too.
Being funded. I'm not sure.
Yeah, former United States rep. I've heard about this.
Yep.
I don't know about it though. But either way.
So there was a George Santos happening every 2 weeks for 2 years. We also had COVID in the news. We also it was just it has been such a whirlwind of crazy in the news cycle that I would forgive every single average MAGA fan, Trump supporter, for not knowing this because it's too much to follow.
Dude, it's a big country.
Too much to follow.
We got lives, we got dogs, we got kids, we got a job, we've got a house, a mortgage to pay for. It's like, hell, who you comes down to vote, cannot take. You cannot do the required work to figure out who's the honest candidate at this point.
Yeah, and I'm talking about the ones that are genuinely interested in it and aren't part of because I think everybody agrees at this point who's not in the cult that there is a cult level following for Donald Trump where all this stuff could be true. They would never care about it. But for the ones that could be swayed, like you when I first met you, right, that are interested in being objective and learning facts and trying to understand the situation better, it is too much for you to figure out on your own unless somebody does a really good job of compiling the information for you. And that sucks because then it becomes about, well, I'm not sure if I can trust that person. And that's what happens. A lot of it becomes about, I don't know if I could believe that because it was on CNN. I don't know if I could believe that because it was on MSNBC. It doesn't matter what the true or not true is. So my appeal to those folks, if you happen to be watching this, is what about the judges? What about the Trump appointed judges in the 50 some odd court cases? What about the fact that Fox News, the news station that you would think would be more likely to be on your side, which means you would maybe trust them to be more objective? What about them completely throwing in the towel and paying off Dominion? At some point, you got to look at all that and say, okay, maybe there's something here.
What do you think?
Investigate it.
Tell me about the alternative ballots.
Oh, the alternative electors?
Yeah, tell me about how Trump actually tried to steal the election.
Yeah. So this is the thing that most of the actual people around Trump are going to prison for. Ultimately, what happened is once all the court cases failed, he had one final pin to pull out of a grenade to throw it into the situation where a lot of people have heard the famous thing where he's calling the guy in Georgia about find me 23,000 votes. Right? So he hit a desperation point where he's just calling governors and saying, hey, I need 23,000 votes in your state. And people were like, well, yeah, he's trying to like overturn the election fraud. But I think when you get to that point, you're pretty desperate. So his last ditch effort is he organizes with some Trump loyalists in 7 or 9 different states. I can't remember if it's 7 or 9, but it was around that number. But it was all the ones that were consequential to the election. Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona. And he's trying to get them to produce, and he does effectively create alternative slates of electors. Now, if you're like, what does that mean? Let me explain. You probably know there's an electoral college. Depending on your state, most of the states in the union are winner take all. So if your state votes 51% Republican, 49% Democrat, all of those electors are going to go to the Republicans candidate. Okay? If you're in a state that goes the other way, all of your electors from your electoral college are going to vote for Democrats. The way that process actually works is that all goes to Congress. They certify the election results. Then the vice president does the final certification. So on January 6th, the day of the chaos at the Capitol, what those folks were actually trying to do and what Donald Trump was talking about when he said Mike Pence needs to do the right thing is that they wanted to delay the certification process so they could create enough chaos to say, hey, we can't trust the official electoral college votes. And here's this alternate slate of electoral college voters that Trump had basically had these loyalists create. And they were fake. They were not legitimate. They were not the legitimate results of the Electoral College from those states. But they were going to have Mike Pence certify those instead, which would have made Trump the winner. What that means is, if you were in a state that voted 52 blue, 48 red, your vote wouldn't have counted like it was supposed to. Your vote should have rolled to the Democrats, but Trump's electors would have been for the Republican instead of the Democrat. And that would have been in 9 states, and it would have essentially worked. Like if Mike Pence certifies that election, it's over. Trump's the president again.
Really? Where did they get those alternative ballots from? How did they create those?
So it's not a ballot. It's like a letter of certification, essentially, is the way it works. So if you're one of the, states have very few electoral college members, right? So if you're one of the electors from the state, that's a person who's assigned to it. Now you're bound by the results of the election to do a specific thing. And so you fill out this formal, form that is, I'm submitting my electoral college vote for this candidate. And then that's what goes to Congress and the vice president. Okay. So the alternates is basically all the real ones got sent. State election boards and the governors and office, all that got done, got sent to Congress. It's there on January 6th, getting ready to be certified. The whole point of delaying the certification process on January 6th by Congress, the reason why they stormed the Capitol is so that in the confusion, they could swap in these alternatives. So there are some of these people who are going to prison because they legit violated the law. They knew they were creating and forging a fake document of being a electoral college elector, even though they're not.
So if Mike certified the fake ones, how could Trump still be president if they could easily go and show the ones he certified weren't even real? It's like there's no takebacks.
No.
How?
It's unprecedented. It's unprecedented. No one's ever tried to do anything like this. This is not normal.
That
Nothing
seems like an
about
easy
this-
fix, though. Like, say he did certify fake ballots, like
Absolutely. It would be an easy fix. But by then, who would already have power? The Republicans.
who has power at a swap though at that point? Like,
But from the moment he certifies it on January 6th, you think that in the month before inauguration, there's any chance of figuring out how to combat something that there's no legal precedent for? There's no legal precedent. So there's nothing you can take to court and say, well, look, this law was violated. It's a perfectly legitimate process. Ultimately, who certifies, like the way it says is the electors that will be certified is Congress and what Mike Pence does. Now, is there a chance it wouldn't hold up? Yeah, there were tons of legal experts that went on TV and said that this could be challenged. The point is why are we even talking about that? What, like, at that point, does it matter? You have a candidate who clearly intends on circumventing the democratic will of the American people.
right.
He just does not care about what your actual vote was, you know?
And you got to think about what if he did get away with it, and what if it did go through? He wouldn't care. You
Nope.
know.
No, there's going to be no accountability, at least for him personally. And so there's been I would argue, very minimal accountability for everybody else.